I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old Oscar Countdown. And this week I'm going to be giving an update to my Best Picture predictions, giving you my thoughts on what I think can win for Best Picture, as well as my 10 movies that I think will get nominated. But if you're new to the series, welcome. This is what I do every single week. We've gone through every single category, giving my predictions for the Oscars in an in-depth video for each category, except for the shorts. Now, these next few weeks, we're going to be talking about some of the award shows that we are going to be getting, Golden Globes, Critics' Choice, see how that affects things. And then we will eventually, in a couple of weeks now, give my predictions on what I think will get nominated for the Oscars, and then try to predict what's, of course, going to win at the Oscars. So if you want to hear my thoughts on different categories, you have that backlog, an in-depth deep dive. But because it's been a few months now since I gave my first Best Picture discussion video, I wanted to give an update to where things stand in the race right now, to just talk about what I think is going to get nominated, but then of course what also has the potential to win. And as always, I'd love to hear your predictions in the comments down below. What does your current lineup of 10 look like? Will that change depending on what these award shows decide to give out their winners? Or if we get things like SAG or, of course, PGA before the Oscar nominations, how will that influence things? Really interested to see how things pan out. So feel free to leave your comments down below. And if you want to hear my thoughts on a particular movie, feel free to use the timestamps in the description below to jump around in the video. And if you're interested in my Golden Globe predictions, I'm going to be releasing that video on probably Wednesday or Thursday of this week. So subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on that video. But without further ado, let's jump into things, starting off with my first prediction, which is going to go to Anora. This is the movie that I think has the highest likelihood of getting nominated, as well as my frontrunner to win Best Picture at this moment. I've seen the movie, saw it back in TIFF, and ever since I saw the movie, it seems like an easy Best Picture winner, a typical Best Picture winner of the modern era, in line with a Parasite or an Everything Everywhere All at Once, in that it's kind of transgressive and new. It's very funny, it's very, very entertaining, but it has some, commentary, some social themes and ideas on its mind that makes it not just a silly comedy, but something maybe a little bit greater than that, with standout performances from really the entire ensemble cast. You have Neon campaigning for this movie, who have won Best Picture in the past with this kind of a movie. In the case of Parasite, a Cannes release that wins the Palme d'Or and then kind of just trucks its way along to Best Picture. I think it's also the frontrunner to win for Best Picture because 9 out of the last 10 Best Picture winners have either had a screenplay win or an acting win. And you look at Anora, I think it's very likely going to win for original screenplay, and I think Mikey Madison is the frontrunner right now to win for Best Lead Actress. So it actually has a screenplay and an acting win. That is the most traditional path. Oppenheimer did it, Moonlight did it, Everything Everywhere All at Once did it. Winning screenplay and an acting award and picture is the clearest, most typical path we see at the Oscars, and Anora has that path pretty clear for itself. So it's very likely to get nominated, and I think has the capability to win as well. Then my second prediction is going to go to Conclave, and I wanted to include this in the number 2 spot because I think this is the most number 2 movie that we've had at the Oscars in many years. That is to say, everyone really likes it. Some people really love it, but nobody really hates it. I think that's the pro case of why this movie could win Best Picture, is because the Best Picture category is the only category that used a preferential ballot or a ranked choice voting, in which the Academy members rank the actual 10 choices rather than just selecting one option. And what that does is, in particularly close years, we see the movie that is the most well-liked, or rather the least hated, win Best Picture because it gets a lot of number 2 spots and number 3 votes, and that does enough kind of momentum to push it over the edge. That's the kind of pro case for the movie. I'm not ready to go there so far. I still have it in my number 2 spot. I don't think it can win Best Picture just because its path is only screenplay picture. I don't think it has a high likelihood of winning in any of the acting categories, even though it probably will get 2 nominations in the acting categories. And it also assumes that Anora is a super divisive movie that gets a lot of number 1 votes, but also a lot of number 10 votes, and therefore a movie that gets a lot of 2 and 3 votes, like Conclave, maybe will, actually win Best Picture at the end of the day. But I don't think Anora is like that. We've seen since Cannes both great critical and commercial support for the movie, and that's just continued to go on. And I believe they have a capable distributor to really campaign for the movie. So Conclave, I think, will be well nominated and maybe win a couple of Oscars. Its big prize ultimately being screenplay, and still, though, very likely to get nominated for Best Picture, has a really universal acclaim to the movie. Then my third pick, I went with The Brutalist, which is a movie that on paper actually I think has the best chances to win Best Picture, even though I have it in my number 3 spot. I have it in my number 3 spot because I saw it back in September at TIFF, and because I've been doing the Oscar predictions now for over 8.5 years. We're on our 9th season of Old's Oscar Countdown. I just knew kind of right away what kind of a movie it was. It was a movie that's more intellectual, more academic. It's a movie that is easy, I think, to admire and respect, but maybe not love. So that's why I've had it kind of in the top of my predictions, but never my actual Best Picture winner, because in recent years we've seen most Best Picture winners have an emotional connection to their movies somehow that makes you feel intense love for the movie and want to sort of support and love it. There are going to be some people that watch The Brutalist and are admired by it, but maybe don't have that secret passion because it doesn't have as strong of an emotional connection as a movie like Anora, or I would say Conclave, or Sing Sing, or even a movie like Wicked. That being said, I mentioned it is the movie with the highest likelihood, at least on paper, to win. I think it has a good shot at winning potentially 2 acting awards, definitely for lead actor, but also potentially for supporting actor for Guy Pearce. It's also a movie that I think is a frontrunner to win for Best Director. It's also the movie that I think may get the most Oscar wins come Oscar night. And those things are all important because 4 out of the last 5 Best Picture winners were also the movie that won the most Oscars on Oscar night. Oppenheimer wins 7, Everything Everywhere All at Once wins 7. So if I think The Brutalist wins the most Oscars or has the opportunity to do that, well then, there's definitely a path there for Best Picture. And then the director side, 4 out of the last 5 Best Picture winners also won for Best Director. Who's the front runner to win for Best Director? I would say right now it's Brady Corbett. So there's kind of a lot of things on paper to go for it, but I've also seen the movie, and it isn't the type of typical winner that traditionally wins. It's maybe a little bit too intellectual, a little bit too reserved, a little bit maybe emotionally cold, to really have a groundswell of support to kind of give it the win, which movies like Anora and Conclave actually do have kind of that emotional connection. Then my 4th prediction, I went with Emilia Pérez, a movie I saw back at TIFF and knew it would do well despite online chatter. It did well at Cannes, it did well at TIFF in terms of runner-up of People's Choice. It's been doing well at a bunch of these awards groups, and every indication indicates that this is a movie that will likely get nominated for Best Picture. I think, though, that it is still in my 4th slot because I don't see it have a real clear path to win Best Picture. There's an opportunity where Zoe Saldana, let's say, gets the win, or maybe even Carlos Sofia Gascon, or maybe Jacques Audiard, but they're kind of not guarantees in either acting category or in for Best Director, definitely. It's also a movie that I think it's notable that the public hasn't really appreciated and liked. Usually when we talk about nominations, though, the movie that is divisive, that really doesn't hurt certain movies. I mean, I've seen Don't Look Up and Maestro and Vice and Jojo Rabbit all be kind of critically reviled on the internet and still get Best Picture nominations easily, because for as many people dislike them, there is a group of people that really love those movies. In the case of Emilia Pérez, really think it's one of the best movies of the year. And we've seen really critical, predictive groups like TIFF People's Choice, or like Cannes, or like Critics' Choice, or like Golden Globes, all really support this movie. So it would be silly not to think that it wouldn't be supported and get nominated at the Oscars. But when we talk about actually winning for Best Picture, that's a different story, because actually, when you're talking about winning Best Picture, you have to have a general consensus. If you're getting a lot of number 10 votes, that really hurts your preferential ranked balloting chances of winning Best Picture. So I don't think it's a nothing that the public dislikes it, because I know that means there will be some Academy members that dislike it. So that ultimately hurts the chances, I think, to win for Best Picture. But we know it has its fans. It's being campaigned by Netflix. Ever since they really started campaigning in 2018, they've gotten at least one of their movies nominated for Best Picture every year since 2018, ever since they started really trying. So you won't want to bet against Netflix. You won't want to bet against all these precursor groups. It's definitely getting nominated, although I'm not super confident and don't think it has a real shot, a serious shot at least, of winning Best Picture. Then my fifth slot, I went with Wicked. This is a movie that I didn't have on my initial Best Picture rankings video back in October. And that's just because I didn't really see it coming. I thought, okay, it was a part one to a musical that should be maybe populist, but maybe not well critically acclaimed as it ended up being. And I still kind of think that after seeing the movie, where I don't think it has a serious shot of winning Best Picture. I've been surprised at just how many Oscar prognosticators I've seen online actually predicting it to win. I'm not in that position. I do think it will get nominated because it's a fall release blockbuster. We've seen past fall release blockbusters that do very well at the box office get nominated. It has a very easy and universal theme of like not judging a book by its cover. The songs from the musical are just fantastic and makes you want to rewatch the movie. So many things kind of going for it. Very emotional movie that I think you can put your support behind. But there's a bunch of things that are going against it too, in particular when talking about it winning for Best Picture. The first being that it is a part one. We've seen other part ones like Lord of the Rings or Dune not win Best Picture, even though they were nominated and generally well-liked films. I think it's also notable that the movie is doing very well at the US box office, but not necessarily internationally. That will hurt, especially as the Academy is really an international group. So if the international kind of audience goers aren't showing up and really watching the movie and the box office, maybe the international members don't really love this movie or don't have that emotional connection to the musical in the same way the American voters do. And I think its themes are very kind of broad and simplistic in a way that maybe wouldn't appeal to the more prestigious, high-minded members of the Academy that like movies like a little bit more artistic, like say Drive My Car or The Zone of Interest. So I don't know if it will have kind of that section of the Academy, nor will it have, I think, the international support of the Academy, nor the Academy that doesn't want to give it to a part one. There's a lot of things going against it, so I'd be hesitant to predict it for Best Picture, but I definitely think it's going to get nominated, definitely based on it, some of the precursors, and even the critics groups that have really showed some support behind it, and just its box office success, and big Universal behind it, who's put a lot of money into it already with the marketing, so we know it's been well seen and well liked and well appreciated. Those types of movies usually get nominated, particularly the big kind of fall blockbusters released so recently and kind of dominating the box office. Then my sixth prediction, I went with Dune Part 2 for a lot of similar reasons as Wicked. Don't think it's going to win. It's only the second of the planned trilogy, as we know. It's not as strong as Wicked right now just because it was released in March, so it's been a few months since people have seen it, so that kind of just decreases in people's minds because it's not the most top of mind movie because they don't remember having just seen it. That being said, I do think we'll, like Wicked, do very well in the technical categories. No acting categories, though, unlike Wicked. Probably not for director, but still get in for picture. And a little bit more, I think, appealing to the prestigious side of the Academy, the high-minded, because it was more critically acclaimed than Wicked, and is from an established director in the case of Denis Villeneuve, who's been nominated, and his movies have been nominated multiple times for Best Picture. So, and even the first one did so well. So it would be silly, I think, not to predict this movie, but it is kind of a movie in my mind that has a very low likelihood to win, but I think a very high likelihood to get nominated because of the support from so many of the technical branches, because of the support of just Denis in general from some of the directors and actors. So it should get a bunch of nominations and ultimately Best Picture. How many it wins will be another conversation. Then in my seventh slot, I went with Sing Sing, and this was the movie with the biggest drop in my predictions since I made my video back in October. I had it in number 3, now we're down to number 7, and that's just based off of its kind of poor performance and lack of maybe intense critical appreciation like I thought it would maybe have. But after its kind of disappointment at Golden Globes and Critics' Choice Awards to a slighter degree, you have to kind of really consider it as like, okay, it's not maybe a potential Best Picture winner. Call me crazy, I still think there is a world where the movie still wins Best Picture, but I think it has a low likelihood, so I'm not really going to talk about from here on out the chances of a movie winning for Best Picture. We're just going to talk about why I went with this movie to get nominated, because we are in this kind of 7th slot, the kind of last 4 spots. I feel confident, though, that the movie will get in for Best Picture. It has a very capable distributor in A24. The movie has been kind of underseen, I think, and we know it's well liked based on the critics groups that have really been supporting the movie, based on even some of the, couple of Golden Globe nominations and Critics' Choice Award nominations. We know that it's in critics and Rotten Tomatoes. We know it's a well-liked movie. The question always has been, is it well seen? We know that it's being redistributed by A24 in January, so, hopefully we'll kind of get an extra buzz and boost based on that. I think the fact that it is a lock, I think, to get in for screenplay, a lock to get in for Coleman Domingo for Sing Sing. Those are two above-the-line, huge categories, very important. So the fact that it's got those two likely nominated categories is huge. I think it has a very strong chance as well for supporting actor to get nominated in Clarence Macklin. So if you say, okay, it's getting supporting actor and actor and screenplay, those are three huge categories above the line from large branches of the Academy in the actors, in the writers that are showing their support for the film. So capable distributor, doing really well with the critics. We know that the Academy is a little bit more critic leaning in more recent years, which is why we've seen stranger movies like Zone of Interest or Drive My Car get nominated, in which past years they wouldn't have. So a movie like Sing Sing, which has also I think a easy to like, strong emotional message, while also being just very entertaining, emotionally moving, a movie that can connect with people on kind of a heart-to-heart level, that make people passionate and want to support the movie as the kind of little movie that could. It's got a great ensemble that have been campaigning and have been out there as well. So it's got, all the hallmarks of a traditional Oscar nominee, critic support, got some okay precursors, but in particular, I think has the big support of potentially 2 acting nominations and a screenplay nomination. Those are 2 really good signs for the movie. So I've seen some people not predict it. I think that's a little bit silly. I think all signs, NBR, likely PGA as well, kind of point to Sing Sing being at least a nomination for Best Picture in an expanded 10 lineup. Then my 8th selection, I went with A Complete Unknown, the most recent Christmas release, just a few days ago now. Seen the movie, thought it was really terrific, and based on some of the critical response, seems to be a lot of people agree with that sense. I felt like I had included this actually in my initial October predictions, and what my thinking back then was, okay, it's going to be pretty well liked, and it's a biopic from a good distributor. And that's kind of my same argument here. Now that we know that it's well liked, now that kind of that box was checked. It wasn't a complete disaster. Now we know that it should be a contender. Now it's not going to get nominated for many categories. It may just get Timothée Chalamet and that's it, or Timothée Chalamet and sound. But that doesn't really scare me off. We've seen movies in recent Oscar years like The Post get in for picture and Meryl Streep and that's it, or Women Talking getting in for picture and adapted screenplay and that's it. So it's not like it hasn't happened in the past before, and the category that it does have is Best Actor, and we know that the acting branch is the largest of the Academy, so the fact that we have some acting support there for Chalamet, likely a nomination, potentially even a win, I think is a good sign for the movie overall. But like I said, I don't want to discredit the fact that it's a biopic and the fact that it's from a good distributor. So looking at the biopic side, if you want to include Ford v Ferrari as a biopic, you could say that 7 years in a row we've had a biopic get nominated for Best Picture. Even if you don't want to include Ford v Ferrari, okay, 6 out of the last 7 years we've had a movie about a famous person, whether it be Leonard Bernstein or Winston Churchill, get nominated for Best Picture. The Academy has told us time and time again they love biopics. What do we have here? A famous person in Timothée Chalamet playing a famous person in Bob Dylan, a biopic about his life. They like these kinds of movies, so there's a positive side and just in terms of the content of the movie. And of course, it's a well-liked, well-reviewed content movie that's released in December, so it's top of mind. I do think it'll do pretty well at the box office. Not great, but it's not going to be, I think, a complete disaster at the box office. So it'll still do like a pretty solid job at the box office, so it won't ruin its chances there. And then the other fact is the distributor by Searchlight Pictures, who have gotten a movie nominated for Best Picture 9 out of the last 10 years. And if you want to include not just Searchlight, but Fox as well, then it's actually more than 10 years in a row where they've had a movie nominated for Best Picture. That is to say, this distributor gets a movie nominated for Best Picture every single year. 9 out of the last 10 years, Fox, Searchlight, or now just Searchlight Pictures have gotten nominated for Best Picture. What are their movies this year? A Complete Unknown and A Real Pain. So no matter what, if you don't want to pick this movie, I think you have to pick a Real Pain. One of those two movies for sure are getting nominated because we know that this distributor is great at getting their movies seen, doing campaigning, getting in front of the right Oscar voters. Time and time again, they've done this. And these are their two big movies of the year. And A Complete Unknown, I think, has the higher likelihood, which is why I have it in my 8th slot. Then in my 9th slot, I went with Nickel Boys. This is a movie that I called out in my October video as having the highest likelihood to get nominated at the Oscars. I've seen the movie, and having seen the movie, I think it's much more of a critics type of a movie. We've seen that, like Ramel Ross, for example, has had the second most best directing prizes behind someone like Brady Corbett at a lot of these critics groups. And it's been winning at certain, big critics groups like the Toronto Film Critics Association for Best Picture. So it has that kind of level of support there with the critics. And that's important because we've seen movies like Drive My Car or The Zone of Interest get a lot of critic support, and that kind of propels them to an Oscar nomination. It's not the box office, it's not necessarily the distributor, it's always that kind of critical response. So that's why I think that matters, which is why we've seen, Palme d'Or winners in recent years get nominated. It's because they're kind of critical festival type movies that the Oscars, as they've gotten more international, have started to appreciate. Nickel Boys fits in that slot particularly well. It's a unique movie in how it's filmed, so it's got a movie that kind of stands out. It's Amazon MGM, and they don't have any other movie this year, really, so they're going to be campaigning hard for this movie to get nominated. I look at it and I go, okay, it's got a guaranteed, I think, screenplay nomination, and then it's competing in a couple of important categories. I think it can likely get in for cinematography. I think it has an absolute chance at getting in for Best Director, maybe even supporting actress for Ingenue Ellis-Taylor. So it's competing in a lot of categories. So I have the screenplay nomination already. If it gets in for director, it can follow what I would consider like a Drive My Car type of a path, where it gets in for director, picture, screenplay, and then one other technical category. In this case, probably best cinematography. Those are kind of the thinkings of where I see the movie right now. It got in for Best Film Drama at the Golden Globes, despite getting no other nominations. We know it's in the conversation, we know it's being seen, and I know, just based on having seen the movie and looking at some of the critics groups that have already supported the movie, that it is the kind of more artsy, more prestigious, more high-minded critical pick of the year. And in a lineup of 10, those movies usually get pushed over the edge, particularly within the Academy, particularly with the Oscars, which still are, I think, a little bit more aligned with critics than, say, the Golden Globe, which is maybe Golden Globes, which are maybe more interested in like box office and celebrity factor and star power, versus the Oscars, which really do line up pretty well with the kind of critical establishment that nominate films. And then in my final slot, I went with A Real Pain. And I went with A Real Pain because I'm betting on the more kind of classical type of a movie to get nominated. There really is, in my mind, only one other real contender to get nominated for Best Picture, and that is The Substance. So you can probably switch out The Complete Unknown and Nickel Boys and Real Pain and The Substance, these kind of last few spots. Some people may say Sing Sing as well. Okay, let's throw that in there as well. You pretty much have to choose, I think, 4 out of those 5 potential movies to get nominated. So I went with A Real Pain over a movie like The Substance because it is more of a classical type of a nominee. It's from Fox Searchlight, or Searchlight Pictures now, which is, as I mentioned, with A Complete Unknown, been nominated 9 out of the past 10 years, have had a movie nominated for Best Picture. We know that they get their movie seen in front of the right people. It is a classic winner in that it's a Sundance movie, so played earlier on in the year at a festival. We usually see at least one Sundance movie get nominated for Best Picture most years. It's a movie that can play well on a streamer, doesn't need to be seen in theaters, so the kind of last minute surge of people just opening up their Apple TV past Oscar voters and seeing some of the year's best movies, I think this movie will play particularly well, whereas a movie like Dune will play well, but maybe not as well if you saw it in a big booming theater. And particularly, I think the fact that Kieran Culkin right now is the frontrunner to win for Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars is a huge thing. We know the acting branch is the largest group of the Academy, so the fact that this movie has a potential win in that nomination is really critical. So you have that. You have, I think, a likely screenplay nomination as well. So you have 2 kind of main above-the-line categories that the movie should get nominated for, which will help kind of the overall support of the movie. And it's kind of a traditional Sundance drama. Great acting, great writing, great kind of themes that make you thinking about the movie long after you've seen it. So I'm betting on the traditional aspect of the movie. I'm betting on the fact that I think it's very likely to get nominated for screenplay and then potentially even has an acting win in the case of Kieran Culkin. And it's from a great distributor who is an expert at getting their movies in front of the right people. So I think A Real Pain is right now in my 10 slot. And then speaking about my first possible contender, that being The Substance, it's absolutely a very strong contender. It could get more nominations than a movie like A Real Pain or Complete Unknown, competing in director and actor and supporting actress and screenplay and makeup, and then could get in for picture as well. But the reason why I left it on the outside was because with A Real Pain, I'm very confident it gets in for supporting actor and screenplay. With The Substance, I'm pretty confident it gets in for screenplay, and that's about it. It could get in for director, it could get in for actress, it could get in for supporting actress, but it also could not. I mean, those are all kind of maybes. Coralie Farge, Demi Moore, and Margaret Qualley, even if you're really confident in the movie, I don't think they would be any higher than the kind of fourth, fifth slot of each of those categories. So there's a real strong chance that it just blanks out there. I think the fact that the movie has been doing well at Critics' Choice Awards and the Golden Globes, it may not be indicative of what the Academy thinks. If anything, you could say it's slightly underperformed at the Oscar shortlist. But really, we don't have any groups that are really kind of have any overlap with Academy voters that have shown great support for The Substance. The movie is also being distributed by Mubi, which has never had a movie nominated for Best Picture that it had major distribution rights to, with the kind of slight exception, I guess you could say, of Drive My Car, but that wasn't kind of one of their main movies. They didn't have the main distribution rights like they do in the case of The Substance. So there's just a concern that, okay, Mubi, who have done well with the Golden Globes, did well again with the Golden Globes at The Substance, but always underperform at the Oscars. Will The Substance underperform at the Oscars? I don't know, but I'm not going to bet on Mubi to do that when they haven't done that in the past as a distributor versus a distributor like Searchlight Pictures, who gets nominated every year. That's a big difference. I also think the fact that The Substance may be just too weird or too gross for some Academy members. I don't think that should be written off. The fact that there's going to be a group of Academy members that aren't going to watch the movie because they've heard it's too gross, versus a movie like A Real Pain, which has a higher kind of accessibility of people potentially watching the movie. So a movie like The Substance has guaranteed, let's say, screenplay and makeup. A Real Pain has guaranteed acting and screenplay. Therefore, A Real Pain gets the edge just based on past other nominations and having a bit of a more traditional type of a structure with a more stronger distributor with a stronger past record. The Substance may be more of the newer Academy type of a pick, but I'm not really ready to go that far and to say that they're going to nominate a movie like The Substance, particularly when we haven't seen any kind of industry support for the movie. It'll be different if it got in at DGA, let's say, and had some, overperformance at SAG. That may be something different to reconsider things. But as we stand right now, it is still on the outside. And then my other possible contender, I went with September 5, which is more of a traditional winner like an Argo or something like that, but the Academy's changed a lot since then. I think it has a chance at maybe editing, maybe screenplay, but that's it. It's not really a strong chance in any of the acting categories and even many technical categories. It has a late release, so maybe it's the kind of surprise of the season. It is an easy movie to enjoy, but it's also not a flashy movie that demands your attention with these big stars in the same way like Timothée Chalamet is in A Complete Unknown, or even someone like a Jesse Eisenberg, are bigger than some of the stars we see in September 5. So I think it is in the conversation, but I don't really see it as a strong contender. It really is the top 11 movies that I have mentioned, and then you could say Gladiator or See the Sacred Fig or September 5, but they're pretty weak 12, 13 type of movies. It really is choose 10 of those top 11 in whatever kind of order you want. This is the order I went with based on those analysis and thoughts. But as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know your final predictions as we stand right now. And of course, these aren't my final predictions. I will have a video 3 or 4 days before Oscar nominations come out where I'm going to break down and go, here are my final predictions, here's all my thoughts on everything, and give us some thoughts and analysis, but not as long as, of course, this full long video of all these different options. If you appreciate the video, give me your comments down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on the Golden Globe nominations, probably Wednesday or Thursday, my predictions of what's going to win for the Golden Globes. That's coming up this week, but that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.